The alarm bells rang through the great halls of the Galactic Council building. Ambassador Veltar's blue scales turned pale as he read the emergency report on his data pad. His 4 eyes blinked in confusion as he tried to understand what he was seeing. This cannot be right, he whispered to himself. The report was simple but shocking. Every human colony in the galaxy had gone silent. Every human trade post was empty. Every human research station showed no signs of life. In less than 48 hours, the entire human race had simply vanished. Veltar remembered his last meeting with Kim Deho, the human ambassador. It was just 3 days ago. Kim had seemed normal, maybe a little quiet, but nothing strange. They had talked about trade agreements and shipping routes like they always did. Kim had smiled and shaken his hand before leaving. Now Kim was gone, along with every other human in known space. The emergency council meeting was chaos. Representatives from dozens of alien races filled the great chamber, all talking at once. The Caraxians were angry, their red faces growing darker with rage. The Zephyrians looked worried, their feathered heads turning back and forth as they whispered among themselves. The Vorthons stood silent, but their tentacles moved in ways that showed deep concern. "Order! Order!" shouted Council Leader Thexara, her voice booming through the chamber. "We must stay calm and find out what happened." Admiral Kethamar of the Caraxian fleet stood up. His massive form cast a shadow over nearby seats. "My ships have checked 17 human colonies," he said in his deep voice. "All empty. No bodies, no signs of fighting, no damage to buildings, they just left." "But how?" asked Dr. Yilmoth from the Zephyrian Science Council. "Humans had over 200 worlds. Millions of people. You cannot move that many beings without someone noticing." Commander Zixathala activated her holographic display. Images of empty human cities appeared in the air above the council floor. "Look at these pictures," she said. "The humans took their personal items, they took their computers and data files, but they left behind all the big machines and buildings. It looks like they planned this." Veltar felt his stomach turn cold. He had worked with humans for 20 years. He knew Kim Deho better than most aliens knew any human. Kim was smart, very smart. He spoke 7 alien languages perfectly. He understood alien cultures in ways that impressed everyone. But Kim had never seemed like someone who would just disappear without warning. "What about the trade agreements?" asked Senator Mordek from the Vorthan Empire. "Humans control 30% of our shipping routes. Without them, our economy will suffer." "It is already suffering," replied Trade Minister Zelnara. "Human cargo ships stopped arriving yesterday. 3 major trade hubs are reporting severe shortages. Food supplies to outer colonies are running low." The council chamber fell silent. Everyone was starting to understand how big this problem really was. Humans had not just been visitors in their galaxy. They had become a part of everything. Veltar thought about Lee Mina, the human engineer who ran the largest space station in this sector. She was always helpful, always ready to fix problems with alien technology. Her station provided fuel and repairs for thousands of ships every month. Now her station was empty, and the complex computer systems that ran it were locked down tight. No alien engineer could figure out how to restart them. "We need to search for them," declared Admiral Kethmar. "Humans cannot just disappear. They must have gone somewhere." "But where?" asked Dr. Yilmoth. "We have star maps of the entire galaxy. There are no unknown systems big enough to hide the entire human population." Council Leader Thexara looked tired. "Perhaps they went beyond our mapped space," she suggested. "Humans were always good at exploring new areas." "No," said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Intelligence Officer Quendar. The small gray alien rarely spoke during council meetings, but when he did, people listened. "My agents have been watching human activities for months," Quendar continued. "Something was different about them lately. They were asking strange questions. They wanted to know about old history, about previous galactic civilizations. They were very interested in archaeological sites." Veltar remembered something. "Kim asked me about the ancients last month," he said. "He wanted to know if we had found any more of their ruins." "The ancients?" Thexara leaned forward. Why? Would humans care about civilizations that died millions of years ago? Quendar's dark eyes seemed to glow. Maybe because they found something we did not. Maybe they learned something that scared them enough to run away. The chamber erupted, in worried voices again. The idea that humans might know something terrible that the rest of the galaxy did not was frightening. Humans were supposed to be the newcomers, the young race that had only joined galactic society 200 years ago. How could they know secrets that older, wiser civilizations had missed? Admiral Kethmar slammed his fist on his desk. We waste time with guessing games, he growled. We need action. I will send my fastest ships to search every system within 100 light years. We will find these humans and get answers. Good, agreed Thexara. All member races will contribute ships to the search. We must work together on this. But Veltar felt a deep worry growing in his chest. He remembered the last thing Kim Deho had said to him. They were shaking hands goodbye, and Kim had looked into his eyes with an expression of sadness. Take care of yourself, old friend, Kim had said. The galaxy is going to change soon, and I hope you will be safe when it does. At the time, Veltar had thought Kim was just being dramatic. Now he wondered if Kim had been trying to warn him about something big enough to make the entire human race disappear into the darkness between the stars. As the council meeting ended and representatives hurried away to organize search fleets, Veltar stood alone in the empty chamber. The silence felt heavy and threatening. For the first time in his long life, he was afraid of what they might find when they started looking for humanity. Or worse, he was afraid of what might find them first. 3 months had passed since the humans disappeared, and the galaxy was falling apart. Admiral Kethmar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at a list of system failures that grew longer each day. His proud Coraxian fleet, once the terror of enemy worlds, was breaking down piece by piece. Ship after ship reported the same problems: navigation systems giving wrong directions, weapons that would not fire properly, and communication equipment that worked only half the time. Admiral, called his chief engineer, the quantum drives on 3 more ships have failed. The safety systems keep shutting them down for no reason we can find. Kethmar's red face grew darker with anger. How can this be happening? Our ships are the best in the galaxy. But deep down he was starting to understand the truth. His ships were not the best because Coraxians had built them that way. They were the best because humans had helped make them better. Kethmar remembered Park Hyunwoo, the quiet human who had worked as a simple merchant in Coraxian space for 15 years. Park had sold them rare metals and exotic materials for their ships. He had also given them helpful advice about improving their weapons and engines. The Coraxians had thought they were getting a good deal from a friendly trader. Now Kethmar realized that Park had been studying their military the whole time. Every piece of advice, every upgrade suggestion, every friendly conversation had been Park gathering information about Coraxian weaknesses. And worse, Park had built hidden flaws into the improvements he suggested. On the other side of the galaxy, the Vorthan Empire was having even bigger problems. Their entire communication network was breaking down. Messages took hours to travel between worlds instead of minutes. Important data was getting lost or corrupted. Trade ships were getting lost because they could not talk to traffic control stations. Senator Mordek floated in his water tank in the emergency command center, surrounded by floating screens showing system failures across Vorthan space. His tentacles moved in patterns that showed extreme stress. How bad is it? He asked his chief technology officer. Very bad, Senator. The quantum relay network is failing everywhere. We are losing contact with outer colonies. Some worlds have been silent for days. Mordek felt sick. The quantum relay network was Vorthan technology, developed by their best scientists over centuries. But 15 years ago, they had allowed human researchers to study it and suggest improvements. The humans had been so helpful, so eager to learn. They had made the network faster and more efficient. Now Mordek understood that those helpful humans like Choi Yunji had been mapping every part of the Vorthan communication system. They had learned how it worked, where its weak points were, and how to break it. The improvements they suggested had included hidden backdoors that humans could use to shut down the entire network if they wanted to. But the humans had not shut it down. They had done something much smarter. They had designed the improvements to fail slowly over time, but only after they were gone. The Vorthans were watching their empire crumble, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. The Zephyrian Federation was facing different problems, but they were just as serious. Their military defense systems were acting strangely. Battle simulations showed that their fleet formations had terrible weaknesses that enemy forces could easily exploit. Their battle plans, once considered brilliant, now looked foolish and dangerous. General Tix Andor spread her feathered wings in frustration as she studied the tactical displays. "This makes no sense," she said to her staff officers. "These formations have won us victories for 50 years. How can they suddenly be useless?" Her intelligence officer, a young Zephyrian named Kixara, had been studying the problem for weeks. "General, I have been looking at our military history. Every major tactical innovation we have made in the last 50 years came from suggestions by human advisors." "Impossible," Tix Andor said. "We developed those tactics ourselves." "No, General. Look at these records." Kixara activated a holographic display showing meeting notes from decades of military planning sessions. In each case, humans were present as observers or consultants. They never directly told us what to do, but they asked good questions that led us to specific conclusions. Tix Andor studied the records and felt a chill run through her feathers. The humans had been so subtle, so careful. They had not imposed their ideas on the Zephyrians. Instead, they had guided Zephyrian military leaders to develop tactics that looked brilliant but had hidden flaws that humans would know how to exploit. "They played us," Tix Andor whispered. "All of us. For decades, they made us think we were getting smarter and stronger, but they were actually making us weaker." Similar discoveries were happening all across the galaxy. On Deltaran Prime, alien archaeologists found human research stations filled with detailed studies of every major alien species. The humans had not just been learning about alien cultures for friendship. They had been creating psychological profiles, learning how different species thought and what they feared most. Trade routes that had worked perfectly for decades were suddenly failing. Systems that humans had helped design were breaking down. Technologies that humans had improved were showing dangerous flaws. Everywhere aliens looked, they found evidence of human involvement in their most important systems. But the most frightening discovery came from the Nexarian corporate states. Their economic system was built on complex computer networks that managed trade across thousands of worlds. These networks had been upgraded many times over the years with help from human consultants. Corporate Director Vexelaran watched in horror as financial data scrolled across his screens. "The trade calculations are all wrong," he reported to the emergency board meeting. "The computer systems are making decisions that make no economic sense. Prices are jumping wildly. Supply chains are breaking down." "Can we fix it?" asked another director. "We are trying, but the humans made the systems so complex that we cannot understand how they work. Every time we fix one problem, 3 new ones appear. It is like the entire network is designed to fail if humans are not there to maintain it." Vexelaran paused and looked around the room at his fellow directors. "I think this was planned. The humans built dependencies into our systems, dependencies on their knowledge, their presence, their cooperation. Without them, everything falls apart." As reports came in from across the galaxy, a terrible picture became clear. Humans had not been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been its secret architects. Every major system, every important network, every crucial technology had human fingerprints on it. But those fingerprints were not just marks of cooperation. They were hidden control mechanisms. The humans had spent 2 centuries learning about every alien species, mapping every weakness, and building themselves into positions where they could not be removed without causing massive damage. And now, they were gone, leaving behind a galaxy that was discovering just how much it had depended on the quiet, helpful humans who had seemed so harmless. In the depths of space, alien search fleets continued looking for any sign of human presence. But as their own ships began to malfunction and their supply lines collapsed, many commanders were starting to wonder if finding the humans would be a blessing or a curse. The galaxy was learning that humans had been much more dangerous as friends than they ever could have been as enemies. The greatest fleet in galactic history was gathering at the edge of Coraxian space. Ships from every major empire hung in the darkness like deadly stars. Coraxian battleships floated next to Vorthan command vessels. Zephyrian fighters flew alongside Deltaran cruisers. For the first time in centuries, ancient enemies were working together. Commander Zixthala stood in the command center of the Joint Fleet headquarters, looking at the massive star charts that covered the walls. Red dots marked every system they had already searched. There were hundreds of them, but still no sign of humanity. "Report," she called out to her mixed crew of alien officers. "Sector 7 Alpha is clear," announced a Coraxian captain. "No human ships, no human technology, no traces of their passage." "Sector 12 Beta shows the same results," added a Zephyrian lieutenant. "Empty space." Zixthala felt frustration growing in her chest. 6 months of searching, and they had found nothing. It was as if humans had never existed at all, but the evidence of their presence was everywhere in the systems they had left behind. "Commander," called Intelligence Officer Quendar from his station, "we have found something interesting on Research Station Delta 9. The abandoned human research station floated in orbit around a dead planet. It had been one of dozens of facilities where humans had studied alien biology and culture. When the search teams first found it months ago, it seemed empty like all the others. But careful examination had revealed hidden data storage systems." "What did you find?" Zixthala asked. "The research files were not completely destroyed," Quendar replied. "Our computer experts recovered some fragments. They show that humans were not just studying our biology. They were studying our behavior patterns, our decision-making processes, our psychological weaknesses." Zixthala felt a chill run through her body. "Show me." The holographic display filled with images of alien test subjects. But these were not laboratory animals. These were recordings of actual alien diplomats, military, officers, and business leaders. Humans had been secretly recording and analyzing the behavior of important aliens for decades. "Look at this," Quendar said, pointing to a file marked with Coraxian symbols. "This is Admiral Kethmar from 5 years ago. The humans recorded his reactions to different military scenarios. They mapped out exactly how he thinks and what decisions he will make under pressure. And this," he continued, opening another file, "is Senator Mordek discussing trade agreements. The humans analyzed his negotiation style and found ways to manipulate his decisions without him knowing." Zixthala stared at the files in horror. "They studied all of us? Every major leader, every important decision-maker, every influential person in the galaxy. The humans built detailed psychological profiles of thousands of aliens. They knew us better than we knew ourselves. The implications were terrifying. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every military alliance had been influenced by humans who understood exactly how to manipulate alien psychology. The aliens had thought they were making their own decisions, but humans had been guiding those decisions from the beginning." "There is more," Quendar said quietly. "We found files from a human named Yoon Jiwon. She was a xenobiologist who worked on terraforming projects across the galaxy. But her real research was about alien reproduction and genetic weaknesses. The display showed detailed studies of alien DNA, reproductive cycles, and genetic diseases. Yoon Jiwon had mapped the genetic vulnerabilities of every major species. She knew which diseases could kill Coraxians, which toxins were deadly to Vorthans, which environmental changes would make Zephyrian eggs fail to hatch. "They could have wiped us out," whispered a Deltaran officer who was listening to the briefing. "At any time they could have created weapons that would kill our entire species." "But they did not," Zixthala said thoughtfully. "They had the power to destroy us, but they chose not to use it." "Why?" The question hung in the air like a threat. If humans were planning to conquer the galaxy, they would have attacked when they had the advantage of surprise. If they wanted to destroy alien civilizations, they could have done it quietly with genetic weapons. But instead, they had just left. "Commander," called out a communications officer. "We are receiving a priority message from the Vorthan home system. They have found something important." The message was from Dr. Hilvaran, the Vorthan Empire's chief archaeologist. His voice was shaking with excitement and fear as he spoke through the quantum communicator. "We found a human research facility on Vorthan Prime," he said. "It was hidden in the old ruins of the predecessor civilization. The humans have been studying predecessor technology for decades, but they found something we missed. Something that changes everything." Zixthala felt her heart skip a beat. The predecessors were an ancient race that had built amazing technology millions of years ago, then disappeared. Every intelligent species in the galaxy had studied predecessor ruins, but most of their secrets remained unknown. "What did they find?" Zixthala asked. "Data cores," Dr. Hilvaran replied. "Predecessor data cores that were still functional. The humans accessed them 15 years ago and downloaded massive amounts of information. Information about the history of the galaxy, about previous civilizations, about something they called the Harvest." The word sent fear through every alien officer in the command center. None of them had heard it before, but something about it felt dangerous and wrong. The human research facility had translation files. Dr. Hilvaran continued. "Partial translations of predecessor texts. They talk about cycles of civilization, about guided development, about something that happens every few million years. The translations are incomplete, but what we can read is terrifying." Zixthala looked around at her officers. Fear was clear on every alien face in the room. "Send us everything you found," she ordered. "We need to understand what the humans discovered." As data files began arriving from Vorthan Prime, Zixthala realized that their search for humanity had uncovered something much bigger than missing colonies. The humans had not just disappeared from the galaxy. They had left because they knew something about the galaxy's past that no other species understood. "Commander," said Quendar quietly, "what if the humans did not leave to hurt us? What if they left to protect themselves from something worse?" Zixthala studied the ancient predecessor symbols appearing on her screens. The translations were difficult to read, but certain phrases kept appearing. Controlled development, guided evolution, the Watchers, harvest time. "Or," she said slowly, "what if they left to protect us from something we do not even know exists?" In the depths of space, the great search fleet continued its work. But now they were not just looking for missing humans. They were racing to understand a mystery that might determine the fate of every living being in the galaxy. And time was running out. Deep in the ancient ruins scattered across 100 worlds, hidden systems began to wake up after millions of years of sleep. The disappearance of humanity had triggered something that was supposed to remain dormant, something that had been waiting patiently for the right moment to begin the next phase of a plan that was older than any current civilization. The harvest was coming, and the galaxy was not ready. Dr. Kang Minseo had been dead for 3 months, but his voice still echoed through the abandoned research station. His final recordings played on screens throughout the facility, telling a story that made alien investigators wish they had never found this place. Commander Zixthala sat in the empty laboratory, surrounded by holographic displays showing ancient symbols and star charts. The air was cold and still, filled with the silence of a place that had been abandoned in great haste. Scattered papers covered the tables, showing research notes written in human languages that few aliens could read. "Play the recording again," she told the translation computer. Dr. Kang Minseo's face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired and frightened, like someone who had learned a terrible secret. His voice was calm, but his eyes showed deep worry. "This is my final research log," he said in the recording. "If you are watching this, it means we humans have already left, and alien investigators have found this station. I hope you are prepared for what I am about to tell you, because it will change everything you believe about your civilizations and your place in the galaxy." Zixthala leaned forward, even though she had heard these words dozens of times already. Each time she listened, she understood more of the horror that humans had discovered. "My name is Dr. Kang Minseo," the recording continued. I am a xenoarchaeologist specializing in predecessor civilizations. For 30 years, I have studied the ruins they left behind. I thought I was learning about an ancient race that had died out naturally millions of years ago. I was wrong. The display changed to show star charts marked with the locations of ancient ruins across the galaxy. Red dots indicated sites where predecessor technology had been found. There were thousands of them, scattered across every inhabited system. The predecessors did not die out, Dr. Kang said. They evolved beyond physical form and became something else, something that watches and guides the development of younger races. They call themselves the Echoes, and they have been controlling galactic civilization for millions of years. Zixthala felt her blood grow cold. The idea that ancient beings were still alive and manipulating current events was terrifying, but Dr. Kang's evidence was impossible to ignore. The Echoes operate in cycles, the recording explained. They allow civilizations to develop naturally until they reach space travel. Then they guide these civilizations into contact with each other, creating what we know as galactic society. They watch as different species share technology and knowledge. They observe how cultures interact and evolve. The star chart changed to show the expansion of current galactic civilization over the past few million years. Lines connected different systems, showing trade routes and communication networks. The pattern looked random at first, but as Dr. Kang highlighted certain connections, a design became clear. Every major development in galactic history was guided by the Echoes, Dr. Kang said. The formation of the Galactic Council, the development of faster-than-light travel, the creation of universal translation protocols, even the locations where different species built their capitals. All of it was planned. Zixthala paused the cue, recording, and looked around the laboratory. Lim Su-young, another human researcher, had left behind detailed charts showing historical patterns. Every few million years, galactic civilization would reach a certain level of development. Then suddenly, collapse in massive wars, the survivors would rebuild, and the cycle would begin again. But why? Zixthala asked the empty room. Why would advanced beings spend so much time controlling younger races? She restarted the recording, and Dr. Kang answered her question as if he had heard her thoughts. The Echoes use galactic civilization as a laboratory, he said. They study how different species solve problems, develop technology, and interact with each other. When a civilization cycle reaches maturity, they harvest the knowledge and genetic material they have gathered. Then they trigger massive wars that destroy most of the accumulated civilization, leaving only the most useful genetic lines and technologies intact. The display showed archaeological evidence from 12 previous civilization cycles. Each one had reached similar levels of development before suffering catastrophic collapse. The ruins of ancient wars were scattered across the galaxy, but most people had assumed they were evidence of natural conflicts between different species. We are currently in the 13th cycle, Dr. Kang continued, and according to the Echo programming we discovered in predecessor ruins, this cycle is almost complete. The harvest is scheduled to begin within the next few years. Zixthala stood up and walked to the window that looked out into space. Somewhere out there, ancient beings were preparing to destroy everything she had ever known. Her species, her culture, her entire civilization was nothing more than a research project to them. The Echoes needed a trigger species to start the final wars, Dr. Kang's voice said behind her. A young, aggressive race that would be easy to manipulate into attacking other civilizations. Based on our research, that trigger species was supposed to be humanity. The recording paused as Dr. Kang took a deep breath. When he continued, his voice was filled with sadness and determination. We discovered evidence that the Echoes had been guiding human development for centuries. Our rapid expansion into space, our quick acceptance into galactic society, our talent for understanding alien cultures, all of it was planned. We were designed to be the species that would start the wars that would end this civilization cycle. Zixthala turned back to the screen. Dr. Kang looked directly at her, as if he could see across time to this moment when aliens would be watching his final message. But humans have one quality that the Echoes did not expect, he said. We refuse to accept that bad things are inevitable, When we learned about the harvest, we did not despair or try to save only ourselves. Instead, we began planning to save everyone. The display changed to show human preparations for their exodus. For over 2 centuries, humans had been secretly building hidden colonies outside mapped space, developing new technologies that the echoes could not detect, and preparing for the day when they would need to disappear. We realized that as long as humans remained in galactic society, we would be used to trigger the harvest, Dr. Kang explained. Our presence was like a loaded weapon pointed at every other species. So we made the hardest decision in human history. We chose to leave everything we had built and everyone we cared about in order to prevent ourselves from being used as tools of destruction. Zixthala felt tears forming in her eyes. She had spent months thinking that humans had betrayed their alien friends. Now she understood that they had sacrificed everything to protect those same friends. By leaving, we disrupted the Echo's timeline, Dr. Kang said. Without their trigger species, they cannot start the controlled wars that are supposed to begin, the harvest. But this will only delay them, not stop them. Eventually, they will adapt their plans and find another way to achieve their goals. The recording showed charts and calculations that Lim Soo-young had prepared. Without humans to start the wars, the Echoes would need to activate their backup systems. Ancient machines hidden throughout the galaxy would wake up and begin forcing civilizations into conflict. If you are watching this recording, it means the next phase has already begun, Dr. Kang said. The Echoes are waking up their direct control systems. Soon, you will face challenges that will test everything you believe about cooperation and survival. The screen went dark for a moment. Then Dr. Kang reappeared for his final words. Remember this. The Echoes are powerful, but they are not gods. They can be defeated. Humanity has spent 2 centuries preparing to help you fight them, but we needed to leave first to avoid being turned against you. When the time is right, we will return. Together, we can break the cycle that has controlled this galaxy for millions of years. The recording ended, leaving Zixthala alone in the silent laboratory. Outside, the stars looked different now. Each point of light might be home to an ancient machine, waiting for orders to begin the destruction of everything she loved. But for the first time since humans had disappeared, she felt hope. Humanity had not abandoned them. They were coming, back to fight alongside their alien friends against an enemy older than any current civilization. The question was whether the galaxy could survive long enough for that fight to begin. The ancient machines woke up on 1,000 worlds at exactly the same moment. Admiral Kethmar was in his quarters when the first reports came in. Emergency alarms rang through his flagship as communication officers tried to make sense of the chaos flooding their channels. "Admiral," his aide called through the intercom, "you need to get to the bridge immediately." Kethmar ran through the corridors of his ship, his heavy footsteps echoing off the metal walls. When he reached the bridge, he found his crew staring at displays filled with impossible readings. "Report," he demanded. "Sir, massive energy signatures are appearing throughout Coraxian space," his science officer said. "Ancient ruins that have been dead for millions of years are suddenly showing signs of activity. And sir, they are not just ruins anymore." The main screen showed a predecessor facility on the planet Corax 7. Kethmar had visited the site as a young officer. It had been nothing but broken stones and old metal, interesting to archaeologists, but harmless. Now it pulsed with energy that lit up the darkness like a small sun. "The structures are rebuilding themselves," the science officer continued. "Stone blocks are floating back into position. Metal beams are reforming. It is like watching time run backward." Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. On Vorthan Prime, Senator Mordek watched ancient towers rise from underground, chambers where they had been hidden for millions of years. On Zephyrian worlds, crystalline spires emerged from mountain ranges, humming with power that made nearby electronics malfunction. But the most frightening report came from Commander Zixthala, who was still at the research station where they had found Dr. Kang's recordings. "All ships, this is Zixthala." Her voice crackled through damaged communication systems. "Something is happening to the predecessor ruins near our location. They are speaking to us." The transmission cut to static. then returned with the sound of something that was not quite a voice. It was like hearing thoughts directly in their minds, in a language that every species could understand, despite never learning it before. Awakening. Protocol initiated, the voice said. Harvest cycle 13, proceeding to final phase. Genetic material collection will begin in 7 galactic standard rotations. Every alien who heard those words felt terror deep in their bones. The echoes were no longer hiding. They were announcing their intention to begin the harvest, and there was nothing the galaxy could do to stop them. Trigger species absence noted, the voice continued. Backup systems activated. Direct control measures implemented. Resistance is futile and will result in immediate termination. Across the galaxy, the ancient machines began their work. On some worlds, they projected energy fields that made different alien species become violently aggressive toward each other. Coraxians, who had lived peacefully with Vorthans for decades, suddenly felt overwhelming hatred for their neighbors. Zephyrians found themselves unable to think clearly in the presence of other species. On other worlds, the machines released invisible influences that disrupted alien technology. Ships lost power and crashed. Communication networks failed completely. Food production facilities shut down, leaving entire populations facing starvation. The galaxy that had been slowly falling apart since humans left was now collapsing rapidly. But this time, the destruction was not accidental. It was planned, controlled, and designed to create maximum suffering and conflict. Admiral Kethamar tried to maintain order as reports of violence flooded his communication channels. All Coraxian ships, this is Admiral Kethamar, he broadcast, on emergency frequencies. Do not engage alien vessels unless directly threatened. Something is controlling our emotions. Fight against it. But his words could barely reach his own fleet. The ancient machines were jamming most communications, allowing only messages that would increase fear and anger to get through clearly. On Vorthan Prime, Senator Mordek floated in his emergency command tank, watching his empire tear itself apart. Vorthan citizens were attacking each other over trivial disagreements. Trade disputes were becoming deadly battles. Panic was spreading faster than any disease. How long do we have? He asked his science advisor. Based on the patterns we are seeing, the final phase of the harvest will begin in 7 days, came the reply. By then, most of our population will be dead from fighting or starvation. The survivors will be easy for the echoes to collect and study. But as the galaxy faced its darkest hour, something unexpected happened. The stars began to shimmer. Commander Zix Thala, trapped near the active predecessor site, was the first to see it. New ships appeared in space around her position, but they were not like any vessels in the current galactic fleet. They were sleek and silver, with designs that seemed to blend human engineering with technology that no one had ever seen before. Unknown vessels, identify yourselves, she broadcast, though she was already starting to hope. This is Admiral Otewook of the Human Liberation Fleet, came the reply in perfect galactic standard. We have returned to honor our promise. All alien ships, please stand down and prepare to receive coordination data. Across the galaxy, human ships appeared from hidden jump points and concealed bases, but they were not alone. With them came vessels of completely new design, built using technologies that humans had spent 2 centuries developing in secret. Attention, citizens of the galaxy. Admiral Otewook's voice reached every world through communication systems that somehow bypassed the echo jamming. We know you have questions about where we went and why we left. The answers will have to wait. Right now, we need to work together to stop the harvest. On his flagship, Otewook looked at the tactical displays showing the scope of the echo operation. Ancient machines were active on over 1,000 worlds. Alien populations were being manipulated into destroying each other. The schedule was tight, but not impossible. Captain Bei Junho, he said to his tactical officer, begin Operation Sunrise. All human ships are authorized to use advanced countermeasures. Priority is protecting alien populations, not engaging echo machines directly. Yes, sir, Captain, Bei replied. Human medical ships are moving to distribute neurological protection treatments. Engineering vessels are deploying harmonic disruption fields around active echo sites. Combat ships are providing cover for civilian evacuations. But the most important part of the human plan involved Shin Arim, a systems specialist who had spent decades preparing for this moment. While other humans had studied alien psychology and ancient history, she had focused on understanding echo technology itself. Admiral, Shin Arim reported from her specialized command ship. I have identified the central control system for this sector. It is located in the predecessor facility where Commander Zixthala is trapped. I am sending her the shutdown codes. Now. Zixthala received the data transmission and stared at the complex symbols appearing on her screens. These are predecessor control codes, she said in amazement. How did humans learn to read this language? We had 2 centuries and access to more predecessor ruins than you knew existed, Shin Arim replied. We found their central archives and learned their history. The echoes are not gods, Commander. They are just old computers following old programming, and all computer programs have bugs. Working together, human specialists and alien crews began to exploit the weaknesses that humanity had discovered in ecosystems. Ancient machines that had seemed invincible shut down when exposed to specific harmonic frequencies. Psychological manipulation fields collapsed when subjected to carefully designed counter-signals. Most importantly, humans shared the neurological protection treatments they had developed. Aliens who received the treatments found themselves able to think clearly despite echo influence. The artificial hatred and fear that had been driving them to violence faded away, replaced by their normal thoughts and emotions. On Korax Prime, Admiral Kethmar stood beside Park Hyunwoo in the command center they had hastily established. The human who had once pretended to be a simple merchant was now coordinating the defense of Koraxian space with skills that amazed the alien admiral. How did you know exactly what we would need? Kethmar asked. Park smiled sadly. We studied your psychology for decades, Admiral. We knew how the echoes would try to manipulate you, so we prepared treatments specifically designed to protect Koraxian minds from their influence. On Vorthon Prime, Senator Mordek worked alongside Choi Yoonji to restore the communication network that the echoes had corrupted. The human engineer, who had once studied Vorthon technology in secret, was now using that knowledge to save Vorthon civilization. You knew our systems better than we did, Mordek said as communication links came back online across his empire. We had to, Choi replied. We knew the echoes would attack your weakest points first, so we learned where those points were and prepared countermeasures for each one. The battle for the galaxy lasted 3 days. Human ships and alien fleets worked together to shut down echo facilities and protect civilian populations. The cooperation between species that had been enemies for centuries was extraordinary. Old grudges were forgotten as everyone focused on the common threat. On the 3rd day, the last major echo facility went silent. Prime Echo Designate 7, the Central Intelligence that had coordinated the harvest, sent a final message before its systems shut down permanently.